So on that note, I would love to introduce Stephanie Elizondo Griest. She will be talking for about 30 minutes, and then the question and answer session will proceed. She is the author of memoirs Around the Block and Mexican Enough. And for the past 4 years, you said you've been the assistant professor of creative nonfiction at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. In addition, she's an award-winning journalist, travel writer, and educator working across the country and across the globe, which has given her keen insight into the issues facing indigenous peoples living on the borderlands between nations. Tonight's book is the culmination of years of firsthand research into how these cultures and individuals negotiate the difficult spaces in between. And on that note, join me in welcoming Stephanie Elizondo Griest.
Can y'all hear me if I go off mic? I move around quite a lot when I speak. First of all, I want to give deep gratitude to my partner, the very lovely violinist Jennifer Curtis, for that beautiful opening. Okay, yeah, sure. I can do that. Okay, great. So I am from Corpus Christi, Texas. Anybody been to Corpus Christi, Texas? I've got a couple of people. All right, excellent. So as you all know, it is basically a half white, half brown town, 150 miles north of Mexico. And that demographic is actually reflected in my family. My mother is Mexican, my dad is Kansan. And I have spent my entire literary career trying to figure out what it means when an international borderline runs right through you. Well, my first instinct was actually to flee. In college, I majored in Russian and then spent 4 years traveling around the communist bloc. As I include in my first book, Around the Block, the big takeaway lesson from that experience of 4 years being in Russia, China, and Cuba was the realization of how many sacrifices people had made to uphold their indigenous culture, even in the face of totalitarianism. When I was in Latvia, for instance, I met a woman whose husband had perished in the Gulag because he refused to stop publishing a newspaper printed in his native Latvian. When I was in Tibet, I met monks who kept images of the Dalai Lama hidden beneath the floorboards of their monastery, and even though that was an incredibly risky thing to do because they did not want to disavow their own religion. Witnessing all of these sacrifices that people made in order to honor their ancestors made me realize that I had essentially abandoned my own ancestry. I did not speak Spanish. I did not practice Catholicism. I had very little sense of Mexican culture or Mexican history, despite being so close to it. So that realization actually kickstarted my next journey to Mexico. I spent a year in Mexico, decided to move there in order to try to learn from the roots that grow within. That was the subject of my next book, Mexican Enough. And as I actually conclude in that project, I will never be Mexican. Not even if I were to move there for the rest of my life. Why? Because what binds a culture is shared memory. My memory is from the Borderlands. To be a member of the Borderlands is to walk between worlds. So in 2007, I followed the magnetic pull home. And what I found there really shocked me. Marginalized communities, my own community, being poisoned by oil refineries, being militarized by the Border Patrol, being trafficked by guns, arms, and people, and being barricaded by a soon-to-be 670-mile-long wall. These tragedies seemed like a coincidence until I happened to land a job 2,000 miles north. There, at the Mohawk Nation of Akwesasne, I found another community carved by border lines, only this time it was the New York Canadian and Quebec, Ontario borderlines. And everywhere I turned, I heard another story that sounded like it was from home. Having lost their land through devious treaties and their mother tongues at English-only schools, Mohawks essentially suffered the very same legacy of colonialism that Tejanos did down in South Texas. Discovering these parallel existences inspired me to write this book. It is essentially an exploration of what happens when an international borderline slices your ancestral land in two. I call it All the Agents and Saints in honor of the Borderlands twin protectorates. You have undoubtedly heard about the Border Patrol, the Border Patrol agents, the first part of the title, not least because your taxes pay their salary. But saints also wield real power in the Borderlands as well. That dichotomy is what I'll be discussing today, the duality of militarization and mysticization, spiritualization that's endemic to the U.S. Borderlands. So because the book opens up in my hometown, South Texas, we're going to go there now. This excerpt follows a road trip that I took with my friend, who is an artist. Her name is Susan Arbage Page. And for 10 years now, she has been walking along the Rio Grande. That's the river that separates Texas from Mexico. And she collects the objects that undocumented workers leave behind in their crossing from one nation to the next. When she finds these objects, she photographs them as she sees them, as she finds them in the ground. And then she slides them into a bag emblazoned with La Virgen de Guadalupe, the patron saint of Mexico. And then she brings them back to her studio in North Carolina, and she photographs them again, and then she hangs these two images side by side. It's quite compelling to see these images. So we are taking that little trip together. And at the end of this, I'll do a reading for like 10 minutes, and at the end of it, I'll show a slideshow so you can see some of the images that I'll be discussing in this reading. And a hardcover book is actually hard to hold in one hand and a mic in another, so I'm going to switch to the podium for this. Okay, cool. Thanks. And we are talking. Is this working? Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Oh, you can? Okay, all right. Didn't realize that. Okay, this is a very fancy microphone here. All right. So I am talking with Mark, who is he is also an artist, and his studio is actually located in Brownsville, Texas, like 100 meters from the border wall. So you can see the border wall outside of his art gallery. I try to be back on the bridge by noon on the notion that the sicarios, the hired assassins, sleep in. I was on the bridge once when a gun battle broke out. My framer lives a block and a half away and was pinned down in his bathroom with his family for 4.5 hours, he says. Once they get going, it's totally deafening. It's worse than the 4th of July. Without skipping a beat, he then invites Susan and me to join him there for dinner tonight. Growing up, piling in a Chevy and driving down to the border towns of Progreso or Nuevo Laredo was my family's favorite way to spend a Sunday. We'd go there for no prescription necessary penicillin when one of us fell sick. We'd go there for cajeta, a goat milk spread that tasted like caramel, when one of us craved something sweet. We'd go there for Easter to stock up on cascarrones, confetti-filled eggs to smash on each other's heads. We'd go there for salt-rim margaritas and bottles of tequila with little worms inside. We'd go there to feel Mexican. We'd go there to feel American. But listening to Clark's story, I realized with sadness, I don't want to go there at all now. This is ridiculous, I know. In the past, I have thought nothing of trekking into Burma at the height of its military rule, or Tajikistan when the U.S. State Department explicitly advised otherwise. I barely flinched hitchhiking across Moscow after the metro closed at midnight. But even though, or more likely because, I grew up just 150 miles away, the thought of walking 3 blocks into Matamoros for a platter of enchiladas and a round of micheladas unnerves me. Though I am fully cognizant that my paranoia is overblown and media-fed, it paralyzes me just the same. And I am not alone in this fear. Tourism to border towns has plummeted in recent years, shuttering many of the region's beloved bars, restaurants, and shops. While I refuse to consider whether the border wall has kept any non-citizens out, it is certainly reinforcing my decision to stay in. I'm going to skip about 2,000 words. The town of Hidalgo stretches along the banks of the Rio Grande. Earthen levees have long held its floodwaters at bay, but a few years ago, some were replaced by the wall that serves the dual purpose of flood control and border security. This wall is the ugliest I have seen. Miles of concrete slabs, teethed in tall steel posts that preside over the green like a cubist sentry. We find the hiking trail leading to the wall, but which should be a 5-minute walk takes us nearly 30. The trail is practically paved with objects. Here's one, Susan says, stopping mid-stride and reaching for a camera. I peek over her shoulder to find a toothbrush at her feet, whole and blue. A red one, missing its bristles, lies a few inches away, along with a broken hair clip. She slides. This is what the border used to be like at Brownsville. It means it's really active, she says, sliding the objects into La Virgen. Next is a purple shirt, tangled in weeds. As she grabs one end and pulls, a Border Patrol vehicle drives by. Its back end is outfitted with a holding cell, something a dog catcher might use. Before I can mention it, Susan says, "Whoa, look at that," and bounds over to a Macy's bag, half hidden in a clump of grass. A pair of Wrangler Originals tumbles out, then a long-sleeve shirt, and finally a handsome belt with a buckle shaped like a longhorn. She examines the jeans. Size 32 by 30, made in China, and they're still wet. That's probably why they are here, she speculates. Over the years, she has learned that the Border Patrol does not allow immigrants to bring anything wet aboard their vehicles because there's no way to dry clothes at the station, plus they can't risk the spread of mold. Belts are also not permitted, yes, lest they be used as weapons. Same with shoelaces, same with hairbrushes, same with toothbrushes. Bras are often a sign of rape, she says. Coyotes will hang them on a tree afterward, like a trophy. Homemade flotation devices usually mean a baby has been brought across. Sometimes you find religious cards on the bank of the river, and you know someone left them there, and thanks for a safe passage. You see caffeine pills, and it's so they can stay awake during the journey. We continue down the trail. Toothbrush, toothbrush, shoelace, shoelace, a water bottle squished, a tennis shoe, half of a comb, most of a shirt, nail clippers, another shirt, a lacy black bra. Susan and I halt mid-step. Yes, a lacy black bra. It isn't dangling from a tree, but still, it is a lacy black bra. When this expedition began at Hope Park a few days ago, it felt like a most peculiar egg hunt. But as La Virgen began to fill, I started to see as Susan does, the objects as reliquaries, the journey as pilgrimage. But the vulnerability of this bra, curled in the dirt, renders the trail into a crime scene. No woman abandons her lacy black bra unless she is forced to, unless she has surrendered the entirety of her attention. Scattered nearby are 2 pairs of panties, a wallet, a travel-size speed stick, a pocket-sized Bible, Nuevo Testamento, 2 pairs of socks rolled into balls, a 3-ounce tube of Colgate, a pack of Trident chewing gum, 5 packages of pills in various colors and sizes, and a light blue handkerchief. The relief I feel from this additional discovery, maybe a Border Patrol agent made her drop everything, as opposed to a coyote ripping off that one thing, gives way to the dread of imagining a woman walking around without these items. Nothing here is irreplaceable, of course, but the woman who packed these items did so with care. Her bra looks almost new. Her panties are still folded. So often in our culture, we are the sum of our possessions. Indeed, at times, they seem the only markers of our passage through this world. What does it mean to pare them down to the essential, and then to lose even those? We continue walking along the wall. The southern side is a mass of tangled green beyond which runs the river. The northern side is hedged with the backyards of family homes. We pass trampolines and wading pools, conked out appliances and junked out cars. We pass by an RV park crowded with campers. We pass by a generator-run Border Patrol-operated skybox that is 70s Soviet chic. We pass by every iteration of fence Home Depot has in stock. And we pass by so many abandoned objects, Not even La Virgen de Guadalupe can hold them all. A siren goes off. Commotion ensues in the distance. We quicken our pace as Border Patrol vehicle pulls up from behind. A Tejano agent sticks out his head. He informs us 60 bodies have been found up ahead. Bodies? I ask, envisioning a pile of corpses. We got 2 of them. The rest of them went back to Mexico. Where are you ladies heading? Susan tells our story, and then asks if we can walk down by the river. Sí, pero... He looks over at me. Pero peligroso? I ask. But it's dangerous? Pues sí. Sure is. We hurry on until we see 3 Border Patrol vehicles idling by the wall. One is outfitted with the container cell I noticed earlier. A female agent steps out, walks around back, and opens the door of the cell. Susan and I freeze in place as a middle-aged woman pops out. Maybe 5 feet tall with sienna skin and curly hair. She's dressed more for a day at the office. Nice slacks, a jacket, pumps, than for fording an international riverbed. Susan puts her camera down as the woman climbs aboard the adjacent vehicle. Although the windows are darkly tinted, I see her head turned sharply away from us. Next out is a 40-ish man with an Olmec nose wearing a white shirt and jeans. He pauses to look at Susan and me before stepping inside the awaiting vehicle. My hand instinctively rises and waves. What I mean by this is hard to articulate, but something like, you are here and I am here the way our ancestors have always been here, but now you are being taken away from here while I still get to stand here, and I am bearing witness to the injustice of that, and I am sorry. I watch the man get swallowed inside the dark of the windows and search for a place to rest his gaze. At one point, he seems to be looking at me. For half a second, I wonder whether or not to wave again, but he beats me to it. Excellent. All right, ready for a slideshow? Okay. So Tejanos and Mohawks, and I'll be reading a section from the Mohawk after we do the slideshow. Tejanos and Mohawks experience borderlines very differently. For Tejanos like me, I consider the line to be a psychic block that mostly stifles my connectivity. We would consider it to be a psychic block that stifles our connectivity with Mexico, which is our ancestral homeland and our closest neighbor. For Mohawks, however, the line is more of a physical obstruction that insults their sovereignty. Both borderlines have architectural manifestations. Obviously, the Tejanos, we have the U.S.-Mexico border wall. Mohawks, however, have a bridge called the Three Nations Crossing Bridge, which is admittedly a rather lyrical, pretty name. But it is anything but. And I will show you some images of that in a bit. Members of both of these communities resent these architectural structures, and they fight back with art, with dissent, and with ceremony. And I'll be showing you examples of those as well. But first of all, I want to put the Borderlands into a global context. So the first thing, I should say is, yes, this is an image of the U.S.-Mexico border wall. Somehow there's this idea that there isn't one. There's actually 675 miles, and it looks in places like that. But first, let's just do a little global tour. And we are not the only nation that barricades itself from neighbors. Currently, there are more than 60 international border lines that feature a large physical obstruction, such as a wall, fortified by a wall. That is more than at any other time in modern history. China's wall, of course, is the best known. It is 2,300 years old, and it is 5,500 miles long. Which is what it would be if Scott Walker got his way with the Canadian Wall, right? Today it is mostly used for tourism, for music festivals, and for marathons. It has almost never, throughout its entire history, been used for defense, even though that was its stated purpose. We have Korea's DMZ Wall. Of course, the Berlin Wall, probably the one most familiar to us, 1961 to 1989. That ideologically divided the city into east and west via 96 miles of concrete. We have the The peace walls, Belfast, Derry, started being put up in 1966. The border wall at Wagga, this actually has an amazing video, but there's maybe not quite enough time to show it. But you can just do a YouTube search for this wall. They actually have quite a fancy ceremony every day when they open and close the walls. West Bank Wall, that's 26 feet high, and when it's complete, it'll be about 400 miles long. So right now, there are a ton of walls going up in Europe, including by countries that were really thrilled to destroy their own wall 20 years ago. Now they are raising new walls in the place of the old walls, this one between Hungary and Serbia. In the United States, we started erecting walls with Mexico pretty soon after the Treaty of Guadalupe was signed in 1848. The initial barriers were to keep in cattle, but they also were serving the double purpose of security. And just kind of went from there, starting off with like barbed wire fences, even just wooden fences, and getting more intense. Chain link fences, starting in the 90s with Operation Gatekeeper, Operation Hold the Line, different political acts. We began to see larger walls, but the real walls started being constructed with the Secure Border Fence Act passed in 2006. That's when Congress approved funding for 650 miles. And of course, Trump is now pledging to build 1,000 miles. He has said, depending on when you catch him, sometimes he says he wants it to be 30 feet high, sometimes he says 40 feet high. When Vicente Fox said there's no way in hell Mexico is going to do that and we're not going to pay for that, he said the wall just got 10 feet higher. So I think the latest I read, it was like 55 feet high. He estimates 10 billion. Department of Homeland Security is actually saying 22 billion. The Washington Post is estimated 24 billion. I mean, there are just so many questions. This is something that a friend of mine sent me, a viral video from the last Carnival. So you can see the world is sort of making fun of this proposed wall by Trump. So this is happening in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, yet where there is art, there is hope. And this is something that I have found to be quite extraordinary, is the artistic responses to this architectural disaster in our midst. Mexicans are essentially embellishing the wall, decorating the wall as fast as the U.S. government is putting it up. This is one of my very favorite Mexican border artists. Her name is Ana Teresa Fernandez, and you might recognize her as the cover girl for my book. And here she is sweeping the wall. The Border Art Workshop, they have been making these coffins for many years, and they place them, this is on the Tijuana side of the San Diego part of the border wall, and you can see they have these life-size coffins, and they paint on the coffins the number of bodies that were found in the desert. This is just the bodies that have been found, right? It's averaging about 500 a year. That's only what we find. That has to be a very small percentage of the actual numbers of deaths. And lots of crosses. Cuantos más? This is sort of a symbol of the undocumented worker, right? These are water jugs, plastic water jugs. And cuantos más means how many more have to die. Lots of skulls. This is all, again, at the Tijuana border. This, however, is in Arizona at the border wall in Nogales and Agua Prieto. These are, does anyone recognize what this is? These are milagros. So milagros, this is a very popular resonance symbol in Mexican culture. And these are humongous. Generally, milagros are like this big. They're these tiny little metal objects, and they come in many forms, usually what ails you. So there are hearts, there are eyes, and you take them to church, you tie it with a red ribbon, and you give it to a saint. When you're having a heart attack, when you're having problems, glaucoma, you get eyes. And anyway, so they're spiritual items. However, this artist has made huge ones, and he is using them as symbols to undocumented workers. So these are all the symbols of the border, right? So here we have a coyote, and a coyote is Spanish slang for what? A smuggler, right? Okay, so you can see, like, you don't trust him, right? Because he has this little serpentine tongue. Here is, the shoe of the migrant worker. This is, we're going to be doing hard work. This is like scared eyes. Keep an eye out for La Migra. Keep an eye out for the Border Patrol, and so on. It's a very, very moving display of art. Again, all of these things happen on the other side, not ours. Ana Teresa Fernandez, here she is, again, this is the image from my book. She is doing a program called Borrando la Frontera, erasing the border wall. So she gets, this is actually Martha Stewart paint, which is kind of funny, and she paints the wall sky blue so that it blends in with the sky, a way of negating the border altogether. But however, you don't find the northern side. Why? Because it is the bulk of the 20,000 Border Patrol agents we have are stationed in the southern border. There are ground sensors, there are predator drones, there are stadium lighting. So difficult to put up a work of art unless you are Ron English. Okay, so there are culture jammers, there are dissentive artists that come in and will jump out of their car and wheat paste something up, and it lasts like 20 minutes and then someone takes it down. So this is one that he did on April's Fool Day in 2011. You can see half of the flag of Mexico, half the flag of the United States, both burros pulling opposite directions. This is another thing that he staged. You must be this colored to enter this country. This was actually, this lasted for like 7 hours before someone even sort of noticed and reacted to it, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. People thought it was legit, actually. This is the border wall, military highway in Brownsville, Texas. That's me. All right. Okay, this is my friend Susan Arbich Page, who you met when I did the reading. This is a series she does called Humanizing the Border. She's done these at border crossings all around the world. She just lays her body down. These are the objects. I mean, it's really, I can't tell you what it does to your body to see these objects everywhere. Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. I mean, you see things like this. You see someone's papers, their wallet, their money, everything important to them, phone numbers. You see entire piles of clothing, where this is someone that's had to basically strip because they can't take wet clothes onto, or maybe they had a bag over their head and it got wet, and so they have to just lose it. They can't take it aboard the Border Patrol vehicle. You always find belts because those are perceived as weapons. This was the bra that we found. This is La Virgen de Guadalupe, who holds all the objects that Susan finds. And so then she takes them back home and photographs them again and documents them. These are ladders. You see ladders everywhere, okay? And this is why the wall doesn't work, right? Because you just build a ladder and you climb over it. You could even, I'm not even that athletic. I could probably climb our border wall in Texas. It's not that difficult to scale, and people who tend to come are in far better shape than I am. So I have friends who've seen people scale it in like less than a minute. This is Mark Clark, who you met briefly in the excerpt I read. This is his work. So he's using traditional Aztec and Mayan glyphs and sort of reconfiguring them for Border Patrol time. So you see the Border Patrol agents, you see people crossing the waters. This is this little detail. This is from La Bestia. La Bestia is the train that a lot of Central Americans take to from Tapachula, Mexico, up from Guatemala up through. This is a very, very, very dangerous train. It is just completely patrolled by criminal gangs that murder people. It's so dangerous to make this crossing. This is sort of a satirical series he's done called Moonlit Mojada. Mojada being wetback. And so you can see a woman in an inner tube. Here's a Border Patrol, and here are people climbing up the wall. So she's sort of like distracting them while they all scale the wall. Roberto Gonzalez, I call him the Caravaggio of the Borderlands. This man is extraordinary. He's based in Harlingen, although he's originally from Reynosa. So this is a series he did called So That They Learn Respect. And anyone who follows Mexico will probably recognize this image from, this is sort of what cast the drug war into international infamy. When members of La Familia Michoacan, one of the really serious drug cartels, went to a nightclub in Michoacan with a gunny sack and rolled 5 human heads onto the dance floor. That's one of them. So these are humongous oil paintings. This you might recognize, done in the style of Cellini's Perseus and Medusa. So this is these are drug cartel action. This is The Crossing, La Guia. This is like the size of this entire wall. This is an enormous, enormous, enormous painting. It's a triptych. So much is happening here. A lot of it religious. So here, this is like La Pieta, right? So this is like Mother Mary with dead Jesus, except this is like a narco cartel. So he has a gun here. Right away, musicians come and began producing a corrido. Here you have the federales. There are 12 of them, sort of symbolizing the apostles. Anyway, you could like do a whole dissertation on this painting. It's really, it's incredible. Celeste Luna is a friend of mine. This is her series called Compass. You have north, south, east, and west interpretations of the border wall. Something she has breech baby, that's you often hear about people being referred to as breech babies. So she's done wood cuttings on those. Stephen Falk, I don't have images of his work, but he's amazing. So I have his website here if you are getting excited about what I'm showing you. He's actually traveled throughout the entire border. He's done these gorgeous portraits of artists throughout the Borderlands. So you just go to bordasartist.com and gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous images of the artists with their work. He's really, really cool. This is a hero of mine, Santa Barraza. Anyone who reads All the Agents and Saints, you will meet her many times. She's in many of the chapters in the first half of the book. And she paints, she's a very renowned Chicana muralist, and she does these beautiful images of La Virgen de Guadalupe everywhere. Huge, huge, huge. Every December she makes a new one. This is Friendship Park. Wow, this is a long story. How to keep it short. So Friendship Park was founded in 1971 by First Lady Pat Nixon, and this was actually one region of the border wall where you could go without a visa, and you could have encuentros, you could have meetings with U.S. and Mexico could meet right then and right there. Through, at the time when it was founded, it was just a barbed wire fence, so you could touch hands through the wall. But gradually, the wall became more and more and more intense, and so now it's like, I think it's 18 and a half feet high. It's covered with mesh. It's quite tragic because not a lot of people are aware that the wall has been changed in this way, so people are still coming from far away thinking that they can meet their friends and their loved ones there, only to find that now the wall is only open on the U.S. side from like 10 to 2 on Saturday and Sunday, and they only allow 25 people in at a time, and it's just a disaster. But again, activists are trying to take it back, doing things like having concerts. My partner who just played for you in the beginning, she did a concert there at the border wall singing to the other side. This is an amazing video. Let's see if it plays. Unfortunately, we can't hear it. This is very powerful. So you can see one side is serenading the other side. This is again San Diego, Tijuana. All right, so okay, so those are artistic responses to the border wall. We also have lawsuits. So this is very, very relevant to what's happening right now, right? So President Trump has said that he would like to erect 1,000 miles. All right, so the the U.S.-Mexico border is 1,954 miles long. We currently have about 670 miles are covered with wall. Most of the existing wall is actually on federal land, so it's easy for the United States government to get permission to do this. And most of the wall exists in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. The big empty part of the border, of course, is Texas. However, Texas, 95% of the border is owned by Tejanos and Texas ranchers. Okay, this is not federal land. This is private land. All right, and I don't know, some of you have been to Texas. Like, what does land mean to a Texan? Okay, like, you don't take it. It's like over our dead body, right? I mean, a lot of the Tejanos that own this land, like, it's been in their family since the Spanish crown. We're talking like since the 1700s. They have land grants dating back that far. Far before it was the border. So do you think they're giving their land up? No, but yet they are getting these letters of condemnation demanding that they sell land for like $1,000 an acre. I mean, is that going to fly with a Texan? No. So what are they doing? We're suing. Okay. So there were like 320 lawsuits launched just when they tried to build 25 miles in South Texas. And now they want to like do the entire wall. So potentially the wall could be curbed by the fact that no Texan is going to go down without a serious fight. There are currently 90 lawsuits active just in South Texas. Okay, I've talked a lot about South Texas, but the book, that's only half the book. The other half, it takes place in the Mohawk Nation of Akwesasne. So now we're going to go 2,200 miles north to Akwesasne. All right, you can already tell this is a very different looking place. Okay, you can bike across the border there, right? Like that does not happen in the South, but you can in Canada. Okay. So the border just runs right through people's yard, and people hardly know the difference. Okay, this is a really famous bar known as the Halfway House. So here we have, I don't know if you can still see right here. Here's a line. This is Canada. This is the United States. It was built in 1820. Canada actually has a younger drinking age, and so the deal was if you were like underage, you would like drink on the Canada side and not the U.S. side. And there was like literally like a painted line in the bar, and you would have to be careful like where you were drinking, which is funny. Okay, average crossing time around here, 5 minutes. Okay, and usually I was one who held it up because I got my passport, and they're like, okay, who are you? Where are you from? So I held up the border wall. Unless, however, you are a Mohawk. Okay, and this is where the injustice of the border wall comes in. Not border wall, but border bridge. So this bridge seems innocuous, but it is just as damaging and upfronting and a threat to sovereignty to a Mohawk as the border wall is to a Tejano or to a Mexicano. Okay, this is a Three Nations crossing bridge. There are protests on this bridge constantly. And you can tell these are Mohawks by the number of feathers that are in their gastoa. This is a traditional headdress of the Mohawk Nation. Also, you can tell they're Mohawk because of the shirts they're wearing. Those are called ribbon shirts. So here's the deal. Here's the Mohawk Nation of Akwesasne. It's about 26,000 acres. Not terribly big. Of course, historically, it was endless, but that is how that's what they've been legally dealt, and there's a fight to get more, but that's what they have at the moment. So here it is, okay, all the way upstate New York. So here's where it gets complicated, okay? Here's the United States, here's Canada, but all of this is still Akwesasne, okay? Here's Quebec, here's Ontario, but this is still Akwesasne, okay? So this basically means they are run by 13 different jurisdictions. Yeah, all of these counties, both of these nations. Ontario has an entirely different set of laws than Quebec. Quebec doesn't. I mean, it's just a nightmare. And we're talking 13,000 people, rather unruly people, objectively speaking, who are attempting to be ruled by 13 different jurisdictions. It's a total jurisdictional nightmare, actually. So the bridge I just showed you is right over here. I think it's right in here. This right here is Cornwall Island, okay? Cornwall Island, obviously, it's part of the Mohawk Nation. However, you have to cross a body of water, which is technically, it's actually right here. It's in the, so you're in New York, you try to get to Cornwall Island, so you leave New York, and you're also leaving Akwesasne. So if you're in the Mohawk Nation, you have to drive over here, so you leave the Mohawk Nation, you go to New York, cross this bridge, you're okay. And then it used to be, you're here, you're at the nation, so you just go and like visit your friend or do whatever you're going to do. But now there's this rule that you have to go check in Canada. Everyone has to do this. This adds up to 3 hours to a Mohawk's day. And I cannot tell you how much this enrages them because this is all their nation. If you do not do this, so there's like one bridge and then another bridge and you have to check in and then come back around. If you do not do that, they fine you $1,000, and if you are caught doing it more than 3 times, they confiscate your car. Canada is currently holding like 300 Mohawks cars hostage in prison because of this. And this is like a nation with 20% poverty rate, and they're stealing their cars because they want to make sure they're not smuggling. They use the term smuggling cigarettes, contraband, guns, etc. people. So. About 20% of pot that comes from Canada to the United States comes through the Mohawk Nation. All right. So the Mohawks are very proud that they are a sovereign nation. You see this sign everywhere. They are a member of the Haudenosaunee, which is the Onondaga word for the Iroquois Confederacy. They've been members of that forever. This right here, this is the traditional Haudenosaunee flag. This right here, however, is sort of this flag became quite prominent during the American Indian movement. Whenever you see this flag is very prominent at Native protests throughout the Americas. Maybe some of you heard of the Idle No More movement. That was a major indigenous movement that began in 2013. But the joke is, it's never idle at the Mohawk Nation. Okay, so I've talked quite a bit. That's about descent. So we started with art, then we went into descent, and now I want to talk about the very, very profound spiritual forces that guide this part of the world. So the Catholicism came to the Mohawk Nation. They did not choose to be Catholic. They were forced to be Catholic in the 1600s. And prior to that, throughout Mohawk history, throughout Mohawk time, they had always practiced the Longhouse. Longhouse is this really powerful spiritual set of beliefs, and it runs around 13 different ceremonies for midwinter, maple, thunder, sun, moon, seed planting, strawberry, string bean, corn, harvest, thunder, and end of seasons. These ceremonies last from 4 hours to 4 days, each one being quite different. And I was incredibly, incredibly lucky. Right before I left Akwesasne, I lived very close to Akwesasne for a year, visiting there constantly, made some really wonderful friends, and I was actually invited to attend a Longhouse ceremony, which is not a typical thing that happens. Generally, outsiders are not invited into a Longhouse, but I was, and very grateful for that, and that's how I'm going to end my presentation, is by reading a brief excerpt from the Longhouse ceremony. All right, let's see if I can do this. All right, I think I can do it. Okay. There is singing, and there is dancing, and there is chanting, and often all three at once. Two men keep the rhythm with rattles made of turtle shells, while the rest of us dance in a long procession around the room. At first, I try to follow the footwork of the woman in front of me, but gradually realize people are moving to their own internal beat. I do as well, relishing in the freedom. At one point, someone grabs my hand. I look down to find a girl who can't be more than 4, staring up at me with unblinking eyes. She's wearing a little white sundress embroidered with strawberries. Her silky black hair is parted into pigtails. She seems to want me to lead her, and so I do, clasping her small hand in my own. Together we travel round and around the Longhouse, along with 30, then 40, then 60 others. Someone makes a sound like yee-oh. The rest of us respond in turn. An hour into the ceremony, Kita exits the Longhouse. I trail behind. Next door is an industrial-sized kitchen where women are preparing the day's feast, pulping piles of strawberries and sliding them into a bucket of water. Kita stations me with her Ishta, her mother, who is making corn mush at the stove. She shows me how to whisk the corn flour and water together until they take on a cream of wheat sheen, then how to add in the strawberries and the maple syrup. Has Kita told you about Sky Woman? Ishta asks, peering at me through her owl-rimmed glasses. I recite the stories I've heard about how Sky Woman fell from the sky one day, landed on the back of a turtle, and walked about sprinkling sky dirt that became earth dirt beneath her feet. Ishta nods approvingly, then adds another legend to my library. Sky Woman's husband often tried to test her resolve. Once, he asked her to make corn mush without wearing any clothes. See how it's bubbling? Ishta asks. I glance down to discover that the mush pot has become a lava pit. A giant bubble burst, singeing my hand with splatter. I yelp and lower the flame. Ishta laughs. That's what Sky Woman's husband wanted to know, if she could endure the pain. No Sky Man for me, in other words, but that's okay. Around this time next year, I'll fall in love with a Sky Woman of my own. But that border crossing story is better saved for another day. Lunchtime. The women from the kitchen pull a long table out into the middle of the room and set it with every strawberry configuration imaginable. Jam, shortcake, compote, muffins, mush, and juice, along with stacks of fry bread and several kinds of cornbread, including one speckles with kidney beans. Elders are invited to line up first, followed by guests, women and children, then men. I carry a steaming bowl of mush back to the bleachers, and Ishta joins me. What else do strawberries signify, I ask, blowing on a spoonful. Holding up her cup of juice, she says, you see its color? That represents the blood of the woman. Pointing at my mush, she adds, when you cut a strawberry in half, it also represents the woman. It grows the closest to the ground, so it's the closest to the earth, which is the mother. That makes it feminine, too. The strawberry is medicine for the woman. Years ago, I helped my friend Rochelle organize a menstruation celebration for teenage girls in Corpus Christi. We delighted over her idea to serve strawberry shortcake with red fruit punch. When I shared this menu with others, however, they thought it kinky. So it's gratifying to learn that Rochelle's instinct was right. That strawberries really do symbolize the feminine and have been celebrated as such by the Nashoni since time immemorial. After lunch, we dance again. As a turtle rattles pound a rhythm into my brain, I feel increasingly elated. Men emit their ye-oh. Footwork gets fancier. Sweat trickles down our faces. Someone whoops, someone hollers, not for a god, not for a prophet, for a berry. Something that leaves behind sustenance instead of commandments. Something that offers a single interpretation. Plant and water and harvest me, I will return. Poison me, I won't. One song ends, another begins. More rattles, different rhythms. Round and around the longhouse we go, drinking the symbolic blood of women, eating the gifts of sky women. Another whoop, another holler, euphoria swirls through the procession. The chanting stops and starts again. New song, new rhythm, same motivation, the valiant strawberry. To say that you almost tasted strawberries is to say that you narrowly avoided death. The skyway above is lined with the fruit. You can pluck as many as you want from the patches. Hours pass, days, then all too soon the music ends. A final whoop, a last yee-oh, and we all clamber back onto the bleachers. The chief removes the wampum hanging on a nearby stand and holds it up to his heart. Again, we are treated to the ahondu galewadegwa, the words that come before all else. We thank Earth Mother, the waters, the fish, the plants, the animals, the trees. We thank the four winds and the thunders, the sun, Grandmother Moon, the stars, the enlightened teachers. We thank the people. We thank the Creator. These are the words that come before all else. Ahondu galewadegwa. Gratitude. Thanks. All right. That was a lot of information, I know. Who has a question? Lots to process. Borders north and south. This project was 10 years in the making. Did I mention that? 10 years of my life went into this project, a long time. Who's got a question?
I'll do it, Stephanie.
All right.
First of all, thank you for making sometimes an abstraction real with real people, real objects. So you did well. I'm going to give you a really tough question because I think you can handle it.
Okay.
Suppose, hypothetically, that you had 5 minutes alone with Donald Trump. And he's not groping you, which is good.
All right.
And you're going to try to convince him that what you've seen makes what he's trying to do wrong. Now, I know that's very difficult. It's not something, but just your initial thoughts. You would polish it later. I've got all that. But what would you say to somebody, or, we use Trump, but somebody who says, oh, the wall is a great thing. So we can just, you've seen it, you've been there, you see the detrimental, those of us who are involved in other things have seen it. So what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, with Donald Trump in particular, gosh, it really is quite, it was Henry Cuellar who has a great quote that you can't solve a 21st century problem with 13th century technology. And so that may potentially be the area. And just actually showing them, I mean, there are these crazy images of the narcos, like, they have a tremendous motivation to get drugs into this country, right? So they use catapults, they use cannons, they actually bring railing and set it against the wall, and they ride jeeps up it. I mean, it's insane. Like, you actually, there are many images. You just Google this. You will find images of Jeeps that are like suspended on the wall with like these railings. I mean, they build tunnels. There are 250 tunnels have been found. That's found, okay? How many more exist? And these are highly sophisticated tunnels. So I think that perhaps, just sort of like logically showing how it doesn't actually work. And then just hopefully flipping through, just consider the history. I mean, the Chinese put tens of thousands of people died, all of their resources for so many years. And the Mongols just bribed the sentries. That is the exact same thing that's happening now. So I feel like what we have to do is stop the reasons why people cross. We have to address drug addiction in this nation. That is, I mean, if I were in charge, I would start a campaign that equated smoking a joint with like killing a Mexican, which is essentially what is often happening. And people that, it just drives me crazy how people are so concerned about organic food and this and that and being a vegan, but yet they smoke a joint, or they're like, will sniff something. And it's, how did this actually even get there? So people don't even question those sorts of things. So I feel like just trying to address like the root causes of all of this, hopefully that might potentially, talking with logic, either that or I would actually bring a Mohawk or a Tejano to come in and try to tell these more personal, compelling stories. It's hard to imagine anyone wanting a wall if you actually listen to the people who are from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Other questions? Yes.
The majority of people who are trying to cross, what exactly are they aiming for?
Okay, yeah, that is an excellent question, right? Why are they coming? Okay, so the people who are coming, the people that I've encountered, the vast majority of them are coming for work, or traditionally they've come for work. So these are folks who, and very often they have a total plan. They're going to Houston. Their brother's meeting them there. Their brother has been there. Their cousin's been there. Like maybe half of their neighborhood has been there. Their entire town has been there. Their entire pueblo has been there. So they have these networks. They often have a job lined up. They're going to work for a specific farm, a particular family. Like they have an agenda. They're coming here with a plan, and we are literally obstructing their plan. And these plans they have are directly benefiting us. So a huge percentage come for work. But just recently, in the past few years, there are so many coming now from Central. So that was traditional. Like the traditional profile was like a Mexican coming for work, right? That was the case until just maybe the last like 4 or 5 years. Now the majority that are coming are actually Central Americans, and they are fleeing bloodshed. They are fleeing. The gangs of Central America, the Mara Salvatrucha in particular, have completely taken over entire cities in El Salvador, in Honduras. Those places are now in Guatemala. The dirty war that started in the 80s continues to this day. So people are escaping. They're basically refugees. They are war refugees, which is why turning them around is such an act of tremendous, tremendous cruelty, because they likely will be killed. They will be killed if they return home. They're coming because they're terrified to return. Their daughters have been threatened with rape. Their sons have been jumped into these gangs. So their families trying to escape. This happened was it 2013? Maria knows. I just saw Maria Saketi. She knows the story. Was it 2013 that was when everyone started coming from Central America, right? I think it was 2014, 2013, 2014, yes. That's when a lot of unaccompanied minors began to come across. So, I mean, I interviewed Border Patrol agents, like, they were aware of, like, 1- and 2-year-olds coming without their families. Like, they were just being handed to someone else crossing. So people are coming without their own children. I mean, it's just, and this is like acts of desperation. This is people escaping, fleeing war. That is now a more typical profile of who is coming across. And then you also have, Chinese. I mean, so, and then whenever a Border Patrol agent finds a Chinese person who's being smuggled across, like that person has probably spent upward of $50,000, $60,000. All of it lost the moment they're caught. So it's tragedy. So people escaping a tragedy only to find a greater tragedy potentially, but they have done that very complicated math and decided the greater tragedy is actually staying home. That is why they're there. So that is like a huge percentage of who is coming across. People trying to find something better, some type of safety in a world that has none. Yes.
So did you have any idea that this would be a 10-year journey? And how did you have the courage to embark on it anyway?
Thank you for asking that. Yes. Wow. So this actually started off as a book about silence. Interesting. Yeah, some people go, huh? Yeah. It started off as a book about silence. I was really interested in the Desert Fathers. I was interested in the desert. My life, for different reasons, took me back to South Texas. I started spending time at a Catholic retreat where a hermit lived who hadn't spoken since 1983. That really fascinated me. I began reading about hermits. I began writing about hermits. So it started off initially as a book about silence. But then I began to become aware of the fact that, South Texas has essentially become a graveyard these last years. I began to become aware of there are people dying of incredibly high rates of cancer just 5 miles down the road from where my parents live, from where I grew up. Because Corpus Christi is actually surrounded by 15 miles of oil, gas, petrochemical refineries. And it just became aware, people were dying in silence. I couldn't be silent. This needed to be a loud book. It needed to become the opposite of what I had intended. It needed to be a yell, a cry, an outcry. So that's what started the book to be about, more social justice issues in South Texas. And so 2007 is when it was about silence. And then when the border wall and all that sort of stuff was happening, then it gradually became more about social justice issues in South Texas. And then it just so happened I had the great fortune to get offered a one-year job position teaching at St. Lawrence University, which is in upstate New York. It's not Sarah Lawrence. I actually thought it was Sarah Lawrence when I applied, I have to say. So Sarah Lawrence, you might know, is actually near New York City. So I thought I was applying to Sarah Lawrence, and I was like, then they sent me a plane ticket. I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm going where? Anyway, that was the kind of, but then I get there and I'm like, oh my God, I am this close to Canada. And then I realized the Mohawk Nation was really close. And then I made the connection of, has anyone here seen the movie Frozen River? Frozen River is it's a tremendously powerful film. It came out in 2008 by Courtney Hunt. It's about the Mohawk Nation. It's about immigration. You can find it, I think, on Netflix. It's the best movie you will see this year. I mean, it's a phenomenal movie. Anyway, and I'd seen that movie, and then when I realized that movie was here, and I was like, whoa. Anyway, so that's what got me interested in hanging out with the Mohawks, and then I was like, deja vu all the time. Anyway, the point is, I did not set out to write a 10-year book project. That was, I did that with my first book, and I'm like, not doing that again, and I just did. So, books take a long time. Books take a long time, a lot of heartache, a lot of pain. And God knows if they're worth it in the end. You just all you can do is hope. Yeah. Ah! Next question. Thank you for asking that. Anyone else? Time for one more. All right. Raul Reyes. Yes. What is your question?
My question is, how strong is for young people who live there along the border? How strong is the pull of getting involved in cartels or getting involved in trafficking? Because I know, being from El Paso, there's not a lot of jobs there. How strong is that for people today?
Yeah. Wow. In Falfurrias, I spent a lot of time in Falfurrias. So Falfurrias is a really fascinating town for me. It's a town of 5,500. It is located 90 miles north of the border. So by U.S. law, we can have checkpoints up to 100 miles away from the border. So this is the one in South Texas, and a lot of my book actually takes place in Falfurrias because it's this extra step. So migrants aren't aware, as I told you, just crossing the Mexico is impossible. Then you cross the U.S.-Mexico border, that's impossible. Then you get up to 90 miles away, you're like, Houston, I'm away. And then you realize you have to cross yet another border. A lot of people die crossing that additional checkpoint. Anyway, so I spent a lot of time with the Brooks County Sheriff's Department, and they estimate that 3/4 of people in Falfurrias, I'm sorry, not 3/4, 40, I think they said 40%. Should I look it up? Okay, anyway, an incredibly, unfathomably high percentage of people there are somehow involved in the trafficking of either guns, people, or drugs. I think it was 40%. Anyway, humongous. Why? It also has a 25% poverty rate, okay? So what often happens, the tragedy that's happening in South Texas, and to an extent also in the Mohawk Nation, is that these traditional lifestyles are no longer possible, okay? So my family, I come from 150 years of vaqueros. All of my uncles were cowboys. All of my uncles, and had been for 150 years. All of my family worked on these ranches that went corporate in the 1980s, that discovered that one helicopter could do the work of 30 cowboys, and the 30 cowboys would take like a week to do. One helicopter could do in a couple of hours. So they fired all the cowboys and hired a helicopter and a helicopter pilot, okay? So all of these traditional pathways are no longer really available. So people that don't have a lot of educational opportunities in South Texas, which is a very high percentage of Tejanos, unfortunately, the major ways you can earn money are to be a drug runner or to be a Border Patrol agent. Okay, so it's like it's one or the other, you know. Those are the two major industries, frankly, in a lot of these small South Texas towns. So it's an incredibly lucrative. It seems to be more lucrative than it is. I mean, obviously, there's prison sentences and there's a lot of danger with it, but it's especially if you already have a record, it's sometimes easier to get a job. I mean, obviously, it's easier to get a job smuggling drugs, and it seems so easy, right? Just drive a truck across. That's it. You can earn, thousands and thousands of dollars for 20 minutes of work, 50 minutes of work. You can see how the temptation would really occur to you. I forgot to say the third job is working at an oil or gas refinery, which is also quite detrimental to the overall health. So there's not a lot of opportunities. Same thing in Akwesasne, yeah? So Akwesasne, Akwesasne traditionally were subsistent farmers, hunters, fishermen. All of that has been decimated by their own, not their own, but by corporate entities that created these highly polluting industries that have poisoned their rivers, that have polluted their lands, that have killed all the cattle they used to have. They can't really fish anymore. There's been like a 50-year ban on fish. They're surrounded by water in Akwesasne. So basically the job opportunities you have at Akwesasne are to work for the tribe. You have to have serious connections to work for tribal office, or you work at the casino, or you smuggle. Okay? So it's like if you take away people's subsistence living, if you take away the traditional lifestyles, what else do you have? You have these dark economies, and that's why they're becoming so lucrative now. Thank you all so much. This is a very beautiful Sunday. I thank you for sharing an hour of it with me. Thank you so much.